And good morning, and welcome to the Suppress Herald. And it's official. The entire editorial board at the Suppress Herald here in Maine, the Maine Distrust for Local News, owned by the National Distrust for Local News, the entire editorial board and team are morally bankrupt, ethically unsound, and humanely insane. That's it. It is no longer a question. I don't know if this is Trump Derangement Syndrome or just liberalism in its typical form, but they are bankrupt. And this is why I say it. RFK Jr., and again, when he went from being a Democrat to running with Trump, and in fact, helping Trump in his campaign, supporting Trump, endorsing Trump, campaigning with Trump, Trump Derangement Syndrome kicked in on, and Kennedy was one of them. And he's a Kennedy with a, long history of Democrat politics, but he had to go. And this latest is just beyond the pale. And it is no longer a question if the editorial board at the Suppress Herald here in Maine should be in anywhere near a newsroom. And this is why I say it. An article and an editorial from that supposed newspaper dealing with autism. RFK Jr. came out and basically had a very strong statement, basically saying that we have an epidemic. We have a serious, serious crisis on our hands with regards to autism. And he shared statistics. And we went from like 1 in 30,000 30 years ago to 1 in 30 something today. Children born with one form or another of autism. Now, keep in mind, autism has they call it the spectrum, and it's got a very wide spectrum of what plays itself as autism. It's a broadly used term, and there are a lot of different aspects of it. What Kennedy made very clear in his statement was that up to about 25% of autism cases are going to be children that never play sports, never go to normal schools and classrooms, never go to college, and never have a job. And in some cases, will never go to the bathroom without assistance. This is the 25% of serious autism cases that are basically never going to have a productive life in America. And this in the United States is unique in this massive, what I would call a pandemic of autism. So, what does the Suppress Herald do? First, they publish an article. So, this is in their regular pages from the Portland Press Herald, reported by a reporter. And this is the kind of thing that they are really looking at. As part of a new effort to study autism, the National Institutes of Health is amassing private medical records from federal and commercial databases, including pharmacy chains, lab tests, and data from patients treated by the Department of Veterans Affairs and Indian Health Service, private insurance claims, and data from smartwatches and fitness trackers. CBS News reported Tuesday. The NIH, National Institute of Health, is also in talks with the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services to increase access to its data. According to Dr. Jay Bhattacharya, the new head of the NIH, the data will allow 10 to 20 groups of outside research to study comprehensive patient data with broad coverage of the U.S. population for the first time. He didn't give details on how the research teams will be selected, but basically, the head of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy Jr., has declared war on autism, and he's declared that he is going to find the cause or causes of autism. And part of this is, as part of the study, a new disease registry is being launched to track Americans with autism. And this is really where their moral bankruptcy shows itself. The announcement further solidifies an ongoing shift away from supporting people with autism living in their communities, said Stacy Converse, managing attorney and leader of Disability Rights Maine's Developmental Disabilities team. For example, the Department of Education's Institute of Education Sciences, which has historically been a major funder of autism research, was recently gutted on the Trump administration's layoffs. The Institute's research focused on developing and evaluating school-based interventions. In other words, treating the problem, not finding the cause. This money, yes, we have to support people with autism, but where is the alarm with the rate, the number of people being affected? And this is just unbelievable. And here's the really big argument here for their complete and utter moral bankruptcy. This is headed in this article, I just want to be left alone. Kennedy has frequently repeated false claims linking autism to vaccines, and hired a discredited vaccine researcher to investigate the disproven theory. Now, if you really look at this, and RFK Jr. has been looking at this through the Children's Defense Network, an organization he's been involved with significantly. They have been looking at the data and the claims that autism is not linked to vaccines and find it flawed. And all they're doing is relooking. The announcement comes on the heels of Kennedy's claims that autism is a preventable disease or an epidemic that destroys families and has been catastrophic for our country. This is in basically parentheses. Last week, Kennedy said during a news conference that children with autism will never pay taxes, they'll never hold a job, they'll never play baseball, they'll never write a poem, they'll never go on a date. Many of them will never use a toilet unassisted. This is exactly what I'm talking about. What they don't tell you is that RFK Jr. in that news conference said very plainly that not all autism cases result in that outcome, but about 25% do. 25%. And now we have 1 in 30 something children are born or end up with autism. That means 1 in 100, 1 in 100 children are never going to function wholly as adults. That's a pandemic. That is absolutely catastrophic for our country, and it's growing and getting worse. He previously vowed to find the cause of autism by September, but has since walked that back. And then they go into a local. Kennedy's recent statements brought up a host of feelings for Marco Orlando: rage, fury, humiliation. Respectfully, this man does not speak for me or my lived experiences as a man who lives with autism. Blah, blah, blah. This is basically saying that there are many people that have autism that, just like me, I have a license and I work and all the rest. I went to college. Fine. What about the 25%? This is sick. This is moral bankruptcy. I'm fine. Screw the other 25%. I'm one of the 75%. I'm fine. What is going on here? This is the Suppress Herald, and they are morally bankrupt or have a severe or terminal case of Trump Derangement Syndrome. And this is Kathy Dion, executive director for the Autism Society of Maine, said Wednesday that she worries that the study could be a foregone conclusion as a way for Kennedy to further false claims that vaccines cause autism. We need evidence-based research by medical providers who have extensive knowledge. Well, where have they been for the last 20 years as autism has exploded? They've been spending their time dealing with autism, not curing or solving the mystery of where it comes from. This is sick. This is absolutely sick. Basically pushing back on Kennedy picking 10 to 20 teams, funding 10 to 20 teams to dive deeply into a whole range of different possible causes of autism. He's basically making this a massive project with as if it's an emergency, which it is. And here is our garbage supposed newspaper with a bunch of morally bankrupt editorial board who would print this garbage in their paper. All because they have Trump Derangement Syndrome, apparently. Then, not to be outdone, then the editorial board prints an editorial in their rag of a supposed newspaper, the Suppress Herald, titled, "Maine is Right to Resist Pointless Autism Registry." The proposal by Health and Human Services Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is an insulting waste of time at best. Oh, let's not find the reason why people are getting autism at this alarming rate. And then they basically tear it down. And then they have, of course, Marco Orlando, who they wrote about in that previous article earlier in the week. Respectfully, this man does not speak for me or my lived experience as a man who lives with autism. Marco Orlando, a resident of Brewer and the vice chairman of a self-advocacy organization speaking up for us, told this newspaper last week. I don't need to be tracked that bad. I just want to be left alone. Well, you are completely evil to basically throw cold water on an effort to try to find the cause for autism, pulling out the stops. Where were the editorial board when we were put on a registry for vaccines that were experimental and damaging, and now we're finding out dangerous and killed and maimed people massively across the world? mRNA vaccines. Where were they when they wanted to put us on a registry for having taken the vaccine, or if you hadn't, to be excluded from society? These people are morally bankrupt. And hopefully the Suppress Herald will follow into bankruptcy, because they do not deserve to be on any kind of position, in any position, to put out this garbage, this propaganda, which is exactly what it is. This one example, basically pushing back on RFK Jr., making a massive effort not to deal with autism and figure out how do we just handle people that are not functional in society at an alarming rate and increasing at an alarming rate. What do we wait until it's 1 in 2 so that one person can take care of the other? Basically, we'll put them together in one functional and one non-functional person. Is that where we're headed? Suppress Herald, editorial board, management, ownership, reporters, the entire organization is morally bankrupt and inhumane. And that's where we are. And again, I don't know if it's Trump Derangement Syndrome or liberalism or a combination of the both, but these people have no business spreading this propaganda and crap to people that read this as if it's news. And unfortunately, we have far too many people in Maine and beyond that read this stuff and take it in as if it was absolutely real, instead of the garbage that it is, the propaganda that it is. I know there are some people out there that are really worried that they're going to figure out what causes autism because it's probably an industry, whether it's people putting chemicals in our water, whether it's people putting mercury, a form of mercury in vaccines, or whether it's people putting crap in and on our food. If this gets figured out, somebody is probably going to have to pay a price, and those people are probably spreading this garbage, trying to discredit RFK Jr., who has been looking at this for a very long time, and thank goodness he is. Let me tell you, it's no longer a question. This simple article in the paper, followed by the editorial board in the paper, discrediting, dismissing, diminishing RFK Jr.'s goal to find the reason, to call it a cure, mostly to figure out how to avoid this explosion of autism in our country. You are bankrupt. Again, politics is local, and so is propaganda. And now we've got a situation where it's unequivocal. These people shouldn't be anywhere near, well, it isn't a newsroom. They shouldn't be anywhere near the power of propaganda. And as I've said many times, even here in just lowly Maine, a lowly populated state, politics is local, and so is propaganda. And the Suppress Herald is at the top of the list, propagandizing with their lies, disinformation, and absolute evil disposition. All for today. I'm not sure what to say more.